I thought I would keep you guys on your toes. I wasn't planning on going live tonight. Again, for the third time today. Well, I guess it's tomorrow now, isn't it? So I wasn't planning on doing this, and then I was sitting here, and I knew Bot would appreciate it. I was thinking like Bot's gonna be so happy. I was sitting here thinking through some things, and I was thinking about writing a post for my DISENRAGE Substack, which of course always turns out well for me on the internet when I write about spiritual things that idiots don't understand. Um, it always turns out well for me when I do that. So I was like, you know what? Let's do even one better. Let's give idiots on the internet video that they aren't going to understand, and they're going to cut it out of context. They'll be like, oh my god, Carlin's talking about the meaning of life. Who does she think she is? Well, Lizard says, I try not to assume the meaning of life. I just live it, man. That's kind of the point, isn't it? That is kind of the point. So I want to talk about PNW says sometimes the streams I like most are when you start with I wasn't planning on doing this stream. Well, you know why that is? I think it's because when I don't plan these things, I don't plan what to say and I just kind of go with it, and I think that that's more in flow, to be honest. It's more honest, it's more authentic, it's more off the cuff. Trendlin is starting rumors. It's a good thing I know who you are, Trendlin. So I had an experience today where I told you earlier that I have access to another stack of Gays Against Groomers screenshots. And I am going to publish something. That's absolutely going to happen. But in the stack of the screenshots, and you guys will have to forgive me. I'm not sure how long my voice is going to hold out, but we're going to do our best. In the stack of screenshots that I was given, there was one in particular that someone incriminated themselves because they thought that they were in a safe environment to do so. Someone incriminated themselves in one of the screenshots, and I'm not going to say how they incriminated themselves. That is not my business. But like badly, and I'm not talking like like something that could in the real world like actually have consequences, okay? Now, part of me was like, F these people. These people have been smearing me all over the internet. These people have been doing this for years. And I don't really care how they feel about it. And that was where I was at earlier today. And then something told me just to stop, just to take a, like, there was no reason to publish it today if I wasn't ready to publish it. And I sat back and I thought about it. And I took another look at some of the screenshots I had. And again, I'm going to publish something. But I ended up making the decision to send a direct message to the person who had incriminated themselves, basically telling them, or asking them rather. I don't even think I told them. I asked them. I said, I have this information. Give me a reason not to publish this. Because this is a person that has been involved with the toxic horde of people on the internet. Now, to her credit, though, and this is, I think, part of why it gave me pause, she's never been one of the people that has really gone after me. She's associated with people who have, but she's never been one of the people who's really gone after me. And so I kind of thought, do you really want to fuck up someone's life over? Do you want to fuck up someone's life over this? And the answer was no. Because although there are a great many people involved in this whole thing that would and have willingly fucked up not only my life, but also the life of people I care about that have nothing to do with any of this. These people would do this in a heartbeat. I kind of thought about it and I said, you know what? I don't want to turn into Mike Harlow. I don't want to turn into Carrie Smith because if Mike Harlow had the information that I have on this person, he would have tweeted it in a heartbeat and he would have not even thought twice about it. If Carrie Smith had the information that I had on this person, but they had it about me, they would tweet it in a heartbeat and they would not even think about it. If James Ree Mitchell, the best CEO and most professional CEO in the history of CEOs, had this information on me, tweeted it in a heartbeat, not even thought about it. And I sat there thinking to myself, do I want to be that type of person? And the answer is no. And you know, the reality is that so I DM'd this person and I said, give me a reason not to publish this. And she did not like that I had the information. And she insulted me. That was her first instinct, was to insult me. And so and she insulted me and then she blocked me. And then I kind of subtweeted the whole situation and I said, you know, if you have information that can, you know, kind of impact someone's life and you offer not to, and basically what happened is I said to her, I don't ever want to see you participating in an online cancel mob of any sort, not against me, not against my friends, not against anyone else, against anyone. I don't care if I even know them. I don't want to see you participate in an online cancel mob because if I see you participate in an online cancel mob, that is going to indicate to me that you believe that if you were on the other side, you would release this type of information. And that was the kind of like ultimatum I gave. Like, I won't release it if you agree that you're not going to engage in this bullshit either for me or anyone else in the world. I don't care. And she insulted me and she blocked me. So I subtweeted it. And she unblocked me. And she started messaging me again. And I could tell that she was scared. And I have seen enough of this person's messages in the context of the stuff I have been looking at with Gays Against Groomers. I've seen enough of this person's messages to know that based on what I've seen, I don't think she's actually a bad person. And I think that she's probably had a rough shake in life. And I don't want to be a type of person that is going to add to that rough shake when it's not necessary. If it was necessary for a larger purpose, maybe. But as of right now, it's just not necessary. So I talked to her a little bit and it kind of confirmed what I thought, that this is a person that has probably had a really rough shake and has closed herself off to being helped by people because I'm sure she has no reason to trust a lot of people. And she sadly has surrounded herself with a group of people that are horrible and toxic and has probably reinforced all of that. And I thought, do I want to be responsible for fucking up this person's life? And the answer is no. I don't. A couple years ago, I probably would have. A couple years ago, I was in a very different place than I'm in right now. A couple of years ago, I was extremely, extremely angry. I was angry. I was miserable. I was depressed. I was really depressed for a long time because I felt like I was trapped. I didn't really wanna do the stuff on the internet. I wanted to do I wanted to, um I wanted to be able to contribute something that I thought was useful to the world. I wanted to be able to utilize the platform that I had been able to build in 2020, but I don't like being a public person on the internet. And no one who is a regular of my content, this is not gonna be a surprise. I don't like being a public person on the internet. For all of the people who think I'm an attention whore, like whatever, I don't actually like being a public person on the internet. It is not my fault that occasionally I do things that get attention. Well, I guess it is my fault, but it's not for that purpose. It is for another purpose. Which is, to be quite frank, why I think a lot of my stuff is successful. What I would define as successful, now maybe the other people wouldn't define it as successful, but that's fine. They're able to have their definition of success, just like I'm able to have my definition of success, and we're allowed to disagree. And you never have to ascribe to anyone else's definition of success but your own. So I'm my definition of successful, I think, with a lot of the stuff I do because I'm not doing it for the attention. I'm not doing it for followers. I'm not doing it for clout. I'm not doing it for any of these reasons. I'm doing it to serve a purpose, to teach people, to help people, whatever the case may be. And I think that's why it resonates with people. And I think that, I think it works. And but 2 years ago I was like really angry because I was in this position I didn't want to be in. I was miserable. I was getting canceled all the time. I had this insane unhinged cancel horde, still do have them, but, like, it was a lot more real for me, and it was a lot newer for me then, and I did things a couple of years ago, to a lesser extent last year, maybe the first half of the year, but I think I started to come out of it. I think I started to come out of it at some point. Maybe, like, 2 3 quarters of the year, I'm not sure. So basically, for most of 2021 and for a good chunk of 2022, I was really angry and I was depressed and I did not want to do this. And I think I quit like 3 or 4 times and it was bad. And a while back, and I think honestly, I think this is one of the things that actually helped me snap out of it. Uh, Joshua said to me, he said, Carlin, you are in a constant state of fight or flight. And I think he was right. Where he told me that I was either constantly looking to fight someone, like I thought I basically thought I always had an enemy right in front of me. And so I was responding to everyone and everything that happened as though I had an enemy right in front of me and I either had to fight them or I had to run away and there no in between. It was either you're going to fight them or you're going to run away. That was it. And I think that um mindset, which I was not aware of at the time, because most of our things that we do are subconscious. We're mostly not aware of what we do. I think that mindset that everyone is my enemy, um, propelled me to do things that I'm not necessarily proud of, but in my head, it was about survival. And when I was talking to this person today, I saw her doing the same thing, where her responses were driven based on her assumption that I wanted to hurt her. And so I think that some of her responses were dumb, but if I understand what they're based on, that she thought I was her enemy. She's heard from a horde of people for years that I'm her enemy. She thought I was only reaching out to her to hurt her. Can I really blame her? Can I blame her for reacting in a certain way if she thinks that she's going to get punched in the face? And it doesn't really, it's kind of like one of those SJW things, right? Where it's like, oh, your intent doesn't matter. It's only the impact. Well, I'm not necessarily suggesting that, but if the person you're talking to thinks you're about to hit them in the face, they're going to react in a much different way than if they don't believe you're about to hit them in the face. So I tried to speak to her as someone who has been through a bit of shit, to be honest. And I tried to, have compassion for the situation, and I don't know what the outcome of it will be, but I guess I feel pretty good about how I behaved in the situation because given the fact that Gays Against Groomers leadership is still, to this second, smearing me all over the internet. I'm sure I haven't even looked at Carrie Smith's Twitter, but I'm sure she's having a fucking field day. She's like, "Let me talk to you about all the reasons I hate Carly." Me. I'm sure she's having a field day. I'm sure they're all having a field day. They're like, "Well, we get to smear Carlin. Oh my god, it's like fucking Christmas," because they're all addicted to it. I kind of was like, you know what? These people are giving me one of the very best examples that I've ever seen in my life of what I never want to become. Because I said to this woman, I said, that if I was Mike Harlow and I had gotten this information, it would have already been tweeted. If the situation was reversed, there would be no mercy, there would be no redemption, there would be no nuance, there'd be no context. In fact, not only would there not be any of those things, they would take the information and twist it in the worst possible way that they possibly could twist it. They would go out of their way to try to legally get me in trouble, which I absolutely could do with this information if I wanted to. And they would keep digging and digging and digging and digging and digging until they killed you. That's what would happen if Mike Harlow and Carrie Smith had the same information that I have on this woman. If they had that information on me. Absolutely. There's no question. And so I was sitting here thinking about that. And of course, a tweet pops up on my stream of Jame Ree, and I love that name, by the way, Jame Ree, calling me psychotic or something, and I was just like, if I'm the craziest person you've ever met in your life, you are a really excuse me, let me say that again. If I am the craziest person you have ever met in your life, you are a really sheltered bitch. But people who aren't addicted to outrage look crazy to people who are, don't they? So I was sitting here thinking about this and thinking 2 years ago, I probably would have just tweeted the image. And then I probably would have regretted it later when I'd had time to think about it. And I probably really would have regretted it if this image had ended up getting that person into trouble. Real trouble, not fake Twitter trouble. And I never want to be like those people. And I never want to be the person I was 2 years ago again either. And I think that that's kind of the benefit of hindsight is I went through this shit, man. And to be honest, I look at these people and I think that they're probably going through the same type of experience that I went through 2 years ago. The difference is they're doubling down and digging in their heels, and I pulled my ass out of it. Now, a perfect person, you can make the argument, would have never gone through the experience in the first place, but I mean, I hate to break the news to you, I'm not a perfect person, and I don't think any of these people are either. And so we have to expect in life, we are going to do things that we're not proud of. We have to expect in life that we're going to go through hard times as well as easy times. We have to expect in life that there are going to be times when we're happy and times that we're sad and times that we're excited and times that we're angry and times that we're overjoyed and times that we're depressed because that's just the way life works. There are ups and there are downs. The wheel of fortune turns, right? And I think, and I've always said that the purpose of life is just to experience things. It's to experience the full range of things. The purpose of life is not just to come here and experience the good things. How would we even know the good if we never experienced the bad? How would we know the joyous if we never experienced the hardship? You know, one of the things they're dragging me for on Twitter, and this is what the last DISENRAGE stream was about, which is I don't like to frame things in terms of good or bad. I don't. I'm sorry. And this is not even, this is the type of stuff. Listen, I never want to exist in a world where I can't have conversations about philosophy and the meaning of life. That to me is one of the things that makes life interesting. That's to me one of the things that makes life worth living. And right now I'm trapped in this world where I'm doing this stream fully well knowing that bad actors on the internet are going to be watching every second of it. Everyone wave to them right now. And they're going to do it just with the sheer unadulterated purpose of finding that 30 seconds of content that they can pull out of context and twist to make it seem like I'm the worst person in the history of the world, that they can sell around. We told you. We told you. We told you the type of person she was and you didn't believe us. And now look at this clip. You know they're doing that. But I never want to be in a world where I'm basing my decisions on the topics that I can discuss and can't discuss based on what unevolved, angry people are going to do. That is a price that's way too high. I would rather have crazy clips floating around the internet for the rest of my life than deny myself the ability to talk about topics and ideas that I find interesting. And if people don't like it, they don't have to watch it. They don't have to engage with the content. They can go somewhere else. They can watch something else. This really shouldn't be that hard. Pro tip, guys, if you are hate watching people, that is a really big waste of time. You know, people have shown me clips of it's kind of like a side note. People have shown me clips of the Twitter idiots when they're doing like live streams and things. They'll say something like, "We know you're watching Curlin." I'm never watching their stuff. They always think I am. They're always paranoid that I am. Sometimes they talk to me like I'm there. I don't watch their shit. The only time that I see their stuff is when someone gives me a clip of it or something and they send it to me and then it's like an accident. And even then, that's kind of died off a lot now. I think that the people that used to send me stuff, I think I'm kind of like, I've told them, like, I don't really care about this. Like, they can read on the internet all they want. Like, don't get me wrong. If they're saying something I really actually need to know about, I do want to know about it. But it's like, they've been whining and complaining for 2 years. They've been saying the same thing over and 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 over again. And I don't it's like, why would I wanna hear exactly the same story, regurgitated again, embellished here, embellished there by the same people that have been smearing me for 2 fucking years? I can't imagine anything more boring, so I don't understand the concept of hate watching. There is more content on the internet than you will ever be able to watch in your lifetime. Why are you focusing so much energy and attention on watching something just to find something to piss you off? Now, Bot says, I hate watch something sometimes. Well, I guess I do too. I mean, I guess Nitwits is kind of hate watching. I guess every time I've watched Chrissy Mare, that's absolutely hate watching. Well, I don't hate Chrissy Mare. I think Chrissy Mare is an idiot, but like, I don't hate her. I mean, she's too stupid for me to hate her. You just can't hate someone that's stupid. It's like, that's what a waste of energy. She's just insignificant and inconsequential. So I guess Nitwitch you could say is like hate watching, but usually it's something I need to watch anyway, or I want to understand. So I am not watching it with the intent of like, I'm gonna find a clip that I'm gonna put on Twitter to make Chrissy Mare look like the most stupid bitch that I've ever come across. That's not the mentality that it's being like done with, right? If I watch things, it's because I wanna watch them because I think they will improve my experience, not because I think they will detract from it. So I don't understand that mindset at all. That mindset of, like, spending all your time engaging with things you don't like, isn't it exhausting? Like, I remember when I was writing Surviving Carrie Smith, it was physically exhausting for me to look at all of Carrie's bullshit. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm thrilled that I did it. And of course, I'm gonna have to do an update soon because I've heard tell, though I haven't actually looked yet, I have heard tell that Carrie is complaining away, but it's like, I don't actually like looking at that. That became a necessity based on the fact of how much they had smeared and defamed me. So it became something that I actually needed to have. And but writing it sucked. But I guess what I'm saying is this, it's like I have the experience of being an angry, depressed person on the internet. And I said and did things I wasn't proud of, but life is about learning from your experiences, learning what makes you feel good, learning what makes you feel bad, and growing. It's about personal growth, spiritual growth. Every 5 to 8 years, every single person in the world will have a major life shift. Every 5 to 8 years, you will become a completely different person than you were before. And so the only thing that we have to base how we act in the future on is our experience in the past, right? But some people get captured by that experience. Like, I was thinking about, for those who watched Nothing Remotely Controversial tonight, I made a clip of, when Joshua psychicked if Jeffrey Marsh was a pedophile. And Joshua said, "No, he's not. He's actually trying to do the right thing. He's trying to help kids, and he genuinely is coming from a place of innocence where he" what Joshua said, for those who missed it, is the feeling that he got ab and Joshua had never heard of Jeffrey Marsh before tonight. And he said that the feeling that he got was that Jeffrey Marsh had been put through hell as a child, and that he today is trying to be the person that he needed as a child because he was put through hell as a child. But ironically, because Jeffrey Marsh hasn't dealt with the baggage that he experienced from going through hell as a child, he's kind of created the same thing where he's literally being put through hell on the internet. And I have to say, I did not feel like a good person when Joshua said, I don't think he likes kids like that. I think he was put through hell as a child. He's a weird person. He has weird energy. It takes some getting used to. But I don't think he's doing anything with kids. I think that he actually wants to be a person that can help kids like him that needed someone when they were being put through hell as a child. And I have to say, I actually felt really bad when Joshua said that. Not only because we did happy hour on Friday where I had the same idea. I thought Jeffrey Marsh was really creepy in that happy hour. But it could also be that he just is a weird person and he has a weird energy, and what I said on the show is I feel like maybe I've heard him called a pedophile so much that I just assumed that it's just kinda like what I was looking for. But I felt horrible when Joshua gave us that answer because I was like, Jeffrey Marsh has been attacked and smeared all over the internet for God knows how long, where hundreds of thousands, millions of people think this guy's a pedophile. What if I just want, and I know that this might be a big ask for some people, but what if we're all wrong? What if Jeffrey Marsh really does have pure intentions and he's not doing anything wrong and he's just a weird person that has different ideas and he wants to help kids that are in a position that he was in when he was a kid, when he was put through hell and he didn't have anyone, and so he wants to be the person that he needed. What if all of that is true? How awful is that? That this person has to exist in a reality in which he is called a pedophile on the internet by hundreds of thousands, millions, a lot of people all day, every day. And what if we're all wrong? That's what I was thinking about tonight. Naruto says, spending time obsessing over outrage addiction sounds boring to me. I agree, Naruto, but that means that you don't have an outrage addiction. But, to be fair, they don't think they have an outrage addiction either. Malty Drider says, with Jeffrey, it reminds me how much standards before 2010 were too high for people because even weird people back then would think Jeffrey is cringe. Maybe. Mama Tembo says, we could be wrong, that's fair, but encouraging kids to blanket distrust adults is difficult for me to vibe with. Well, think about it this way, though, Mama. If all of the adults in his life treated him unfairly when he was a kid, would you trust adults? I think we can understand Jeffrey's perspective if we start with the assumption that there is a reason that Jeffrey doesn't like adults. There is a reason that Jeffrey is teaching people that it's okay to disconnect from your parents. He may have had to do that. They may have. I'm sorry, Jeffrey. I'm gonna call you fucking he. I'm sorry. You look like I'm sorry. It's just gonna come out that way because otherwise I'm gonna be thinking too much about it, and I'm talking to him like he's watching right now. He's never gonna see this, but it ruins my flow to think of the they pronoun. All right. But what if Jeffrey? I don't mean any disrespect by not using the pronouns. I just actually want to talk in flow here without editing myself and correcting myself. All right, people of the internet. What if Jeffrey had such an effed up relationship with his parents that it permanently impeded his ability to see adults or parents as like a trusted, safe source of information or even a positive connection. And because Jeffrey has that perception based on what happened to him with him being put through hell, he does not understand. He has had no experience with having adults in his life that he could trust. And so he wants to talk to kids who are in positions like that and to give them someone that they can talk to because he maybe didn't have anyone. And I'm kind of supposing a lot of stuff here. The things I'm saying could be wrong, but it actually does make sense. And that doesn't make him a pedophile. It doesn't make him a bad person. Perhaps it does make him a person with unmanaged baggage that he should probably work out in therapy, but it does not make him a pedophile. I was thinking about, you know, I've talked about this before. My relationship with my family is not great. My relationship with my parents is not great. There are a lot of reasons for that that I'm not going to go into. But the reason I say that is I I quite literally do not understand people like I have no experience with having a positive, loving, empathetic relationship with my parents. I have never experienced that. I am sure my parents tried. I am sure my parents did the very best that they could. Hurt people, all that stuff. I'm not angry at them. I have worked through my feelings about about my entire childhood. I am not saying anything negative about them. This is not to rip on my parents, but I very literally have no experience with having parents who love me at any point in my life. They might think they do, but my relationship with my parents was always completely different than any of my friends. And I never understood the relationship that my friends had with their parents because mine was always completely different. I don't understand what it's like to have parents who help with your homework. I don't understand what it's like to have parents who drive you to practice. I don't understand what it's like to have parents who talk to you about your life. I don't understand what it's like to have parents who are available as a resource if it's necessary. Don't get me wrong, they always provided money, but they didn't do any of the human things. And so, to be honest, when I saw Jeffrey's video about, um, I spent more time with my grandparents than I did with my parents. They both worked. It wasn't their fault, but I spent more time with my grandparents than I did my parents. Anyway, the point is that when Jeffrey made that video of like going no contact with your parents, I understood what he was talking about. I understood based on my life experience why it may be better for some people to go no contact with their parents. It may be better. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, but My experience was that I had to. Now, I talk to my mother every once in a while here and there. I haven't spoken to my father in 9 years. I haven't spoken to my brother in almost 12 years. And I don't know that that will ever change. And for me, these things were necessary because that was just my experience in life. Is it an ideal thing? Well, no, but I can understand it. And so I don't think this isn't true. You don't know what the financial situation was with my parents. You have no idea. This is a horrible thing to say. Both my parents did have to work. See, this is what I'm talking about right here. This is the type of person that I don't want to become. And the internet incentivizes you to become a person like this. I think I was this person probably for about a year and a half. I don't want to be this person. I think that this person should work out their issues. I think this person probably needs the same therapy that Jeffrey needs. But it is actually really good timing, and you're going to get banned now, by the way, because I don't want that shit in my chat. But that was actually good timing because that brought me back around to the reason that I wanted to talk about this, because the only way that I understand that I don't want to be that person that I just blocked in the chat is because I went through the experience of being that person. And I didn't like it, and it wasn't good for me. I didn't like the way it made me feel. I didn't like the way it made me act. I didn't like the person that I was. Well, Crystal says your self-awareness will prevent you from falling into the hate, plus you have a fan base. Well, it didn't though, Crystal. I had, and this is part of the thing. It's like you have to be so careful when you're on the internet about what voices you listen to, because I think it was my quote unquote fan base that led me to being angry, because I was listening to so many people and they were all so angry, and I thought that this is the audience I need to appeal to. This is the audience that I need to be successful. And so I became that person. I don't think I ever got as bad as a lot of people I've seen, but I absolutely was that person for a little while. And I didn't like I mean, it was fine at the time. It was fine at the time, but then looking back on it now and kind of almost seeing it reflected, it's so funny how that happens. Oh, look, he has another one. Why would anyone wanna be this person? You know, it's funny, it's like, you can see, because I was addicted to outrage and anger for, like, a really good year and a half while being a public person on the internet, I can look at a person like this and see that reflected back to me. and go, "God damn, I was that, and I did some stupid shit." He's getting blocked now. I acted as crazy as Jame is acting right now on Twitter. I acted as I went on tweet storms all the time. Now, sometimes the tweet storms were purposeful and that I wanted to call my audience, and sometimes they were just that I was angry. And so I was like, "Me, fuck you, me." And in the process of doing that, there were absolutely times that I said and did things that I look back, I'm like, "What the fuck were you doing?" Like, the way that I'm looking at Jame, I should probably stop calling her that if I'm coming from a place of love. The way that I'm looking at Jamie from Gays Against Groomers right now with her just absolute unhinged lunacy is I'm like, if she ever gains self-awareness, she's going to look back at this and go, "What the hell was I doing?" There are some things that I look back on and I'm like, "What the hell were you doing?" Now again, I understand why I did it. I was depressed, I was angry, I was surrounded by people who were ginning me up all the time. So I understand it and I'm not gonna I've forgiven myself for that. But it's because I have the experience of going through that that I can identify what's happening now with Gays Against Groomers and with Mike Harlow and with the psycho Carrie Smith and with all of these people. And I can look at them and say, I know where you are because I've been down that path and I know where it goes and I know it made me feel like shit. I know I didn't feel good. And I'm grateful for that experience because even though there were a couple of years where I was going through absolute hell in ways that I can't even express. And even though today there are still people on the internet who are attempting to put me through hell, but are actually being a lot worse to an innocent person because they've convinced themselves that he's evil by looking at circumstantial evidence, taking things out of context, not listening to anything that contradicts the story that they need to tell themselves that I am the worst possible person in the world, and because Carlin is the worst possible person in the world, we have to smear and dox all of her friends. They're hurting they're hurting innocent people, an innocent person, in exactly the same way that the mob goes after Jeffrey Marsh. And again, we're living in a fantasy world where Jeffrey Marsh is just trying to do the right thing and is coming from a place of innocence. And I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, weirder things have happened, right? Like, what if everyone is wrong about him? What if everyone is wrong? Wouldn't you feel like a shitty human being if you went after someone like that? Like, so many people go after him and then you found out you were wrong. I know that this cancel horde is wrong about my friend that went to jail. I know that. But they're doing it anyway. Because that's the type of person they are. That's where they're at in life right now. And maybe they'll grow out of it and maybe they won't. I tend to think that none of them are smart enough or self aware enough to grow out of it. But who knows? I suppose stranger things have happened. But it's so easy for me to look back on it and say, because I have the experience, I know what this means. And I don't want to be a person that goes after people and accuses them of horrible things when I could be wrong. when I don't know. It's so easy to fall into this trap though on the internet because this is creating outrage content is the easiest way to make money. And it is not hard to figure out what is going to outrage people. There are two types of content that you can create on the internet to make money. Number 1 is repeating the talking points that people want to hear. Number 2 is outrage content. And that's pretty much it. Repeating the talking points that people want to hear or outrage content. I'm sure there are exceptions to that, but that kind of is the rule. It is the easiest way to make money by far on the internet. And sometimes those two things overlap. Do I want to be the type of person? This is where I really divert. Well, yeah, Tom J, I suppose that's true as well, isn't it? Well done. And this is where I really diverge from people like Jamie and people like Mike Harlow and their whole band of merry lunatics is that money is not worth it to me if I have to create that type of content. It's simply not. It would kill me. I don't want to be that person. I never want to go back to being that person again. I was there for too long. And so when you make that decision, it puts you in some tough positions because you know that you know that it's always going to be harder for you. But the payoff is worth it because you can look yourself in the mirror and know that you're proud of the decisions you made. When I was reading on the stream, the Gays Against Groomer article on the stream earlier, it was like, I mean, I didn't even really read through a lot of like the stuff of Jamie's reaction to it because it was like nauseating to me to write that. Can you imagine being the type of person that spends 2 solid days replying to every possible tweet that you can, spreading a smear campaign about someone on the internet that you know nothing about, and you think that that is like you think that's going to lift you up? I don't know what she thinks she's accomplishing. What is she getting out of it? I don't know. I really don't know. It makes no sense. She's saying the stupidest things. Maybe she just hasn't had this type of experience. I don't know. Maybe this is a new thing for her and it's exciting and she's got adrenaline because she's in fight or flight. That might be what it is actually. I mean, if we're being honest about it, Jamie is probably scared that she's going to lose her organization. So she's in fight or flight. She's trying to act like a boss bitch, but she's really just behaving very stupidly. Well, yeah, exactly. She keeps telling me take the L, but what do you think the L even is? What have you I don't know what she thinks I've lost. I also don't know what she thinks I've won or what she thinks, excuse me. I don't know what she thinks I've lost. And I don't know what she thinks that she has won. It's like she hasn't maybe does she not have the life experience to know that different people have different goals and different values and define success differently and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? But maybe she needs this experience. Maybe this is something that will teach her over time that this is not a smart thing to do because it's going to come back to bite you. God, I know I learned that when I went on certain tweet storms. If the purpose of life is experience, then inherent to that, then we are going to have experiences in which we do things that are not altogether a good idea. But guess what? Freedom means the freedom to be wrong. Freedom of speech means the freedom to say really fucked up shit. Freedom of speech means that you can say stuff that offends people and you're going to have to deal with the consequences of that offense, which sometimes might be idiots defaming you on the internet. That just might be the reality of it. Well, Joshua disagrees with you, Jamie. We asked the question tonight. So I'm going to guess that's because either you have an issue with Jeffrey or you've heard about it on the internet that much. Because I trust Joshua's judgment in this case. I really do. I think it's like the same thing with Dylan Mulvaney. I don't think Dylan Mulvaney is doing anything wrong. I don't think he's doing I'm sorry, sorry. I don't think that Dylan is doing anything wrong. And it feels like does it feel like to anyone else that outrage right now is just currency on the internet? Like every single person that is existing in at least Twitter, maybe it's just Twitter, maybe other places on the internet aren't like no, Gab is always like this. I feel like it's so bad right now with outrage culture on the internet that people are being incentivized to be angry all the time, to say the most extreme thing, to find these gotcha moments, to go after anyone, to because you gain followers and clout by dragging people, apparently, except not really. There is incentive to avoid nuance, to avoid context, to just be fighting all day, every day. And when you're fighting all day, every day, that's going to put you into fight or flight all the time. You're going to see everyone as an enemy, everyone as an adversary. And if you see everyone as an enemy or an adversary, you're going to go after them. And it doesn't matter. Maybe they could have been on your side. Maybe it actually could have been a correct partnership, but because you're angry about something, you need to go after them to validate your anger about that probably isn't even about them. You think Carrie Smith's anger is about me? Of course it's not. Carrie Smith's anger is about her mother. And then she displaced it onto me, and then she's working through all of her mommy issues on the internet regarding me. And then people start to get reinforced. They're like, yeah, Dranger. And like, have you guys noticed for people who are on Twitter watching the Gays Against Groomers bullshit, have you noticed that almost every single person replying to Jamie is an anonymous account? Maybe Jordan Peterson is onto something when he said that we should get rid of anonymous accounts. I don't actually mean that fully, but this is something that I've noticed. Every single person coming into my replies is an anonymous troll account. Every single person feeding the outrage is an anonymous account. No offense, bot. Well, no, but it's for people like bot that like I'm like, okay, I don't actually want to get rid of anonymous accounts, but god damn. There'd be so many problems that would be solved if we did. No, and I know a lot of you have anonymous accounts and that's fine. I'm not suggesting that everyone with an anonymous account is a troll and just like a horrible human being. But to be quite frank, I have been blocking people and blocking not this time. Actually, you know what's funny? Jamie's trying so hard to cancel me, and I'm barely even experiencing it in my feed. That's the truth. Jamie is trying so hard to cancel me. She's really going for it, and I barely even hear it in my feed. It's like it's beautiful. It's so quiet because she's trying so hard to send these mobs of people at me, and it's just not working. They're not doing it. Either they're not doing it or either they're just not doing it, period, or the ones that are inclined to do it, I already blocked them a long ass time ago. So they can't do anything. Where was I going with that? Oh, right. But the ones that I have heard are anonymous accounts. And they just say the same thing over and 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 over again. It's like a script, they're NPCs, and it's like, "Okay, so most of you have to be bots," or like, "This is like a troll farm," and then I'm like, "Did Jamie get, like, a whole bunch of bot accounts? Did you like, it's like, these are it's like it's a psyop. Twitter is a fucking psyop. It is designed to make people angry. And you really have to game the algorithm. Like a couple months ago, maybe I don't even know if it was a couple months ago. Maybe it was just a month ago. I don't even know because time is meaningless anymore. But I started trying to game the algorithm to have more positive content show up in my feed, and it's working. You can game the Twitter algorithm for sure. You have to follow a lot of those positive, like, well, here's what I did anyway. And I learned this through experience. You have to, what I did was I followed just a lot of those like positive mindset accounts and I put notifications on for all of them, so I was making sure that I was seeing the positive mindset accounts come up, and I was, like, making a special priority to look at the positive mindset accounts, and I've been interacting with them, I've been liking them, I unfollowed a metric ton of people, and I've really just been focusing in on, like, feeling good and a positive perspective and different things like that. And because I started following more of those accounts and I started interacting more with those accounts and I started retweeting those accounts more and hearting those accounts more of the associate accounts started like the things that the algorithm has said these things are similar started showing up in my feed. And so it actually happened really quickly where because I was really focusing on trying to shift the algorithm, I stopped interacting as much with the negative accounts and I started interacting with the positive mindset accounts. Now, sadly, on Twitter, what that means is that my reach for some of my content is not going to be as far because I'm no longer interacting with the shit posting outrage accounts. And so my content, I don't think, is being fed to those accounts. But it's also like, I don't care because it's so much better. And I feel like because I've been in that space, and I think I spent at least a month since I started fucking around with the Twitter algorithm. I think it's been about a month, if not maybe a little bit more. Because I've now been in that space for a month, it's changed my brain and I've solidified a habit out of it because that's how long it takes. And so I think it's actually made it more pronounced for me, that experience of really focusing on trying to have more positive experiences. And I've been really focusing on meditation and did mushrooms a couple times too. And I really did it with intention. It wasn't just like, ew. It was fun, don't get me wrong. But that wasn't the intention of doing it. The intention of doing it was to release different things and to gain some perspective and to learn things that I needed to learn to create a better experience. And I feel like it really has helped along with everything else. And so now when I look at the bullshit and the outrage, I have it with a completely different perspective than I had 6 months, a year, 2 years ago. And it just looks so insane to me now. But it wouldn't have looked insane to me 2 years ago because my brain was different then. Yes, bot, I did some magic chocolate and it was glorious. It was glorious. And no, I wasn't on Twitter because if you're going to do the magic chocolate, you don't go on fucking Twitter. That's dumb. So what am I trying to say? What am I trying to say? That is a good question. We've been live for about an hour. I'm going to start wrapping it up. I got other stuff I got to do. I can't live with regret for the things that I did when I was addicted to outrage and I was angry and I was depressed. Even if see, this is why I really have to have a certain level of IQ in my audience. Because this person just listened to this conversation and thought, "She's defending a pedophile." Which, of course, is not what the conversation was about. But that's what this person heard. Really think about that. That's what this person heard. Me saying, there is a reality in which perhaps Jeffrey Marsh isn't actually a pedophile and is not actually doing anything wrong. And just because he's creepy and has weird energy doesn't mean that he's actually doing anything wrong. And wouldn't you be a horrible person? He's not going to get what I'm about to say. Wouldn't you be a horrible person if you went and called someone a pedophile all over the internet when they hadn't actually done anything wrong? Because guess what? You don't know. You don't know whether they've done anything or not. You don't know what their life was like. You have no idea what's driven them to be where they are now. Can you look at yourself in the mirror and say, I am a good and decent person if you have spread lies around the internet by someone that you've never even met or never even spoken to, and you're just doing it for entertainment? Is it entertaining for you to call someone a pedophile? Because truly, and this is not the topic of this stream, but it is something I've been thinking a lot about lately. The word groomer is getting thrown around like the left throws around the term racist. The word pedophile is getting thrown around like the left throws around the term white supremacist. It is becoming currency on the conservative right to call people groomers and pedophiles. And in the course of throwing these words around like they mean nothing, you are devaluing what it is. And guess what's going to happen? When you throw out these terms and you are crying wolf every single time you do it, just because someone has said something you don't like, or someone has said something that is quite frankly above your IQ level, or someone has offended you in some way, or someone has pushed back on your political party in some way, or someone has questioned the running of an organization that is quite obviously not being run well or effectively or with any sort of professionalism. And it is plain as day to see that that is exactly what's going on with Gays Against Groomers. It is not being run well. It is not being run professionally. It is not being run with any sort of sensibility that exists in real world organizations that Jamie could have damn well learned from. Instead, they're just screaming, "We are against groomers! Groomers are everywhere. They're everywhere. And we're going to save you. We are going to save you. We'll save you. We'll save you." Every time you use these words, when it does not apply, you devalue them. And you make it, quite frankly, more likely that actual groomers and actual pedophiles are going to get away with it. Because when you call everyone that you disagree with a groomer or a pedophile, you're going to get a lot wrong. Because I'm sorry, regardless of what Pizzagate or QAnon or any of these right wing conspiracy theories say, the world is not filled with groomers and pedophiles. That is not true. People are not surrounded by these people at all times. Not every teacher is a groomer. Not every person that has ever talked about being non binary is a pedophile. It just doesn't make sense. I am around children almost never. I cannot remember the last time I was around a child. That's I really I really don't remember the last time I was around a child. That's the truth. I think it's fucking glorious. And maybe this has to do with the relationship I had with my parents, but I don't want to be around children at all. No offense. I'm not saying anything against your kids. I'm sure they are lovely. And guess what? You can understand the problem with teaching the next generation of human beings to hate themselves and to be indoctrinated into absolute insanity. That's not just a problem for parents, because that is a problem for all of us. Okay? I am going to suffer if we raise a generation of lunatics going through the public schools. I am going to suffer. Everyone I love is going to suffer. You're all going to suffer. I can understand the problem of raising a generation, or quite frankly several generations, of lunatics, because the schools are indoctrinating kids, and yeah, they absolutely are. I don't have to like or want to be around children in order to say that. That's where nuance comes in. Where nuance doesn't come in is what I just said is going to get clipped on the internet, and they're going to go, "Carlin doesn't even like children." And then in the same sentence, and this is the really crazy part and proof that these words are being thrown around willy-nilly like they mean nothing. The exact same person who is going to make a clip of me saying, "I don't really like children and I never want to be around them," and they're going to go, "We told you. She doesn't like children. Oh my God. Can you imagine learning from her what's going on in the schools? She doesn't even like them." The same people that make that clip are going to make a separate clip where they're going to call me a pedophile. Have you ever met a pedophile in the wild that didn't want to be around children? So much so that they've isolated themselves off from children to the point where they are around children maybe a couple of times a year at absolute most. And even then, it's kinda like you're in the supermarket and you have to, like you keep a perimeter. You don't go near the children. You can see them and they can see you, but they stay over there and you find ways to walk around them so you don't actually have to interact. That is quite literally my life, and I'm not gonna apologize for that. I think it's great. I'm very happy with that situation. But can you imagine a reality in which a person on the internet who truly believes they're a serious person is both going to try to get a gotcha moment in and say Carlin doesn't like children, and in the exact same breath they're going to go Carlin is a pedophile. And it's like this is the type of lunacy that we live in when the word pedophile and groomer are being used as currency on the right. If I'm calling someone a groomer, it's because they are actually doing things that I can see on slides or on video that I don't think is necessarily beneficial to the development of children. There's a reason for it. It's not just thrown around willy-nilly. And I really resent that because of this outrage culture bullshit that everyone is being sucked into, and I'm sure the left is getting sucked into it too, but I see it primarily on the right or with these right-leaning conservative organizations. I really resent that the value of the word is being diminished so much to the point that it is meaningless. Groomer on the right means the same thing as racist on the left. Pedo on the right means the same thing as white supremacist on the left, which is nothing. It means nothing because it's been way, 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 way overused to create a moral panic, to feed the outrage addiction, and generate money. And we're all going to suffer because of it. But I refuse to feed into it because I don't think that I would be a very good person if I put out the type of content or the type of material that drove the outrage addiction. Now, Sasha from Gays Against Groomers said, "There's no sauce. It's not juicy." Well, sometimes we don't need to be feeding into everyone's lowest form of sensibilities. Thomas, I think it's exactly like the satanic panic. Anyone who lived through the moral majority in the late 80s and the early 90s, and yeah, I did. I was young, but I did. Anyone who lived through that period knows exactly what's going on right now, and it is the satanic panic. It is the satanic panic part 2. Everything that happens in your childhood affects you. Everything. The good and the bad. Everything that happens in your childhood affects you. If you think that the goal of life, the meaning of life is to live a perfect life without trauma, I think your expectations are extremely detached from reality. given that almost every single person in the world will have some sort of trauma in childhood, guess what? They're going to have trauma later in life too. And if they don't manage their shit from childhood, because if people tell them, your life has been destroyed based on this thing that happened in childhood, which means they don't manage their baggage because their life has been destroyed. Why? If something happens to you in childhood and your life has been destroyed because all the adults in your life told you that your life has been destroyed because of something that was out of your control, what's the point of going to therapy? You've learned from the adults in your life that your life has been destroyed. So what's even the point of dealing with it? If it's irreconcilable, if you just can't ever work through the trauma that you experienced in childhood because it destroyed your life, because that's all what the adults tell you, then what's the point? Having a victim mentality is never going to be beneficial. Victim culture isn't just on the left anymore. Victim culture is very much alive and well on the political right. Look at all the ways I was hurt. Look at all the bad things that happened to me. Guess what? Bad things happen to everyone. Now, you may have had different bad things happen to you than happen to Johnny Jones down the street. But to be quite honest, you don't know what's happened to most people. You have no idea what's happened to most people. And so you could see yourself as the biggest victim in the history of victims, but is it possible that someone has been more victimized than you have? Well, yeah, it is possible, and it is probably true. And not even is it possible, but someone that you grew up with and went to school with was probably victimized worse than you were. Someone that you lived on the same street with was probably victimized more than you were. And a lot of those people go on to lead perfectly healthy and happy lives because we can get over trauma in our childhood. Everyone does it to a greater or lesser degree. You have no incentive to do it, though, if you're being incentivized to be a victim of your own trauma. And Puppy Jack says, I grew up in a sex cult. No joke. I bet that was pretty fucked up. I bet you've seen some shit. How did you get through it? Serious question, Puppy Jack. You're an anonymous dog account. If you grew up in a sex cult and you are one of the people saying, don't have a victim mentality, how'd you do it? Because there are quite a few people, and many of them work for Gays Against Groomers, that would tell you, but your life was destroyed. If you grew up in a sex cult, your life was destroyed. How is it possible that you're saying here, don't have a victim mentality? You grew up and had horrible trauma in your childhood. Your life must have been destroyed, right? How'd you get through it? How are you a person right now that's telling people don't have a victim mentality? You're not always in control of the things you experience, but you are in control of how you experience life. I love that. We are not a victim of our experiences. The minute that we start seeing ourselves as a victim of our experience rather than our experience helping us to become the person that we need to be to do what we're meant to do, that's when we lose. If Jamie wants to talk about me, like handing me the L, Carlin, why don't you just take the L? You know what the real L is, Jamie. Jamery. The real L is giving up on the idea that you have no control over how you experience life. You may not be in control of the things that happen to you, and that's especially true when you're a kid. but you are in control of what you do and how you show up in the world and how you see yourself and how you move through experiences that are traumatic. Whether you move through experiences that are traumatic. The challenge of life is not to live a trauma-free life. That will never happen. There is not a single person in the world that has ever led a completely trauma-free life. And you don't know what other people's trauma are. A lot of times they don't even know what their trauma is. And so making assumptions about what other people have and have not experienced, saying, "My trauma is worse than yours because this happened to me. I'm a bigger victim than you." What are you winning by being a bigger victim? Is there a trophy? Is there a contest to be the biggest victim in the world? Puppy Jack says, "I'm struggling, but I don't have a victim mentality." With, um with people who have been targets of workplace bullying, and I know this because I studied workplace bullying for 10 years, I've helped a lot of people who have been through the trauma of workplace bullying, and yes, it is a trauma. People might not think it's as great as some, but it's deeply traumatic for a lot of people. I've heard a lot of horrible stories about things that have happened to people in the workplace. It was a soul-sucking thing to do to study workplace bullying for 10 years. Anyway, the reason that I bring it up is, when you're working with targets of workplace bullying, you never call them a victim. And I suspect that that is true of a lot of things. You call them a target. You do not ever call them a victim because you do not want them to see themselves as a victim. You want them to see themselves as something that had something happen to them that was not their fault, that they could not control, that they did not have the power to stop, but you do not want them to see themselves as a victim of that experience. You want them to see themselves as a target of the behavior. Because the minute that they start seeing themselves as a victim is the minute that they can't move on and grow from the experience. If you see yourself as a victim of something, you are going to be forever stunted by that thing. That's going to become part of your identity. It'll be part of how you see yourself. And once it's part of your identity, then it is damn near impossible to get away from. In order to help people get over trauma, you need to fundamentally separate the person who they are from what happened to them. If they see themselves as one and the same, I am my trauma. I am this. I am a victim of something. I'm not going to say it because I don't want to give someone a clip, but if you have a person that says, I am a victim of childhood abuse, that's who I am. That's innate to who I am. That's part of my identity. And they see that as an inherent part of who they are, something that they can never move on from, something they can never separate from, something they can never detach from. They are going to be forever stunted by that experience because they quite literally see it as a part of their identity. It is not healthy to see yourself as a victim. And it is equally unhealthy for anyone to tell anyone your life is destroyed based on this thing happening to you. You are a victim of this thing happening to you. You will never be able to get over this thing that happened to you. Not having a victim mentality is absolutely essential to be able to manage the trauma that you experience in your life, because we will all experience trauma. Every single one of us will experience trauma. And we have choices that we can make when that happens. We can either bury the trauma inside of us and repress it, in which case we will very literally repeat the trauma over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. We are going to repeat. If you repress trauma because you don't want to manage the baggage, you are setting yourself up to experience that trauma over and over and over again throughout your entire life until you manage the baggage. I understand that managing the baggage is difficult and unpleasant, but you are just going to keep recreating the same scenarios until you deal with it. That is a subconscious thing that happens. You are not aware that you're doing it. When Joshua was talking on the show tonight about how horrible things happened to Jeffrey Marsh in childhood, and then he might actually be recreating those things in the real world right now, that's what we're talking about here. He didn't manage the baggage from his childhood. And so it kept showing up in other really unpleasant ways, and it's going to keep happening until he manages it. So that's one thing you can do when you have trauma. You can repress it down inside of you. Another thing you can do when you have trauma is to see yourself as a victim of that and have it become part of your identity. I think we all know someone named Lime Lady. Well, some of us know someone named Lime Lady. Not everyone knows Lime Lady. Lime Lady is a woman that used to, well, for like about a week, was in my community. And she very literally has built an identity around Lyme disease. And I'm sorry I can't come up with a better example right now. I'm sure there is one, but like she's just the first one that came to mind because she has very literally developed an identity around having Lyme disease. That's part of who she is. She dyed her hair long, she dyed her hair green. She calls herself Lyme Lady. Her entire identity is built up around having this chronic illness. She is not a person who happens to experience the symptoms of that in a manageable way. She quite literally made it part of her identity. She will never get rid of it. She will never minimize the symptoms of it. It doesn't matter what she does. It doesn't matter how many doctors she sees. If you are incentivizing yourself to experience an illness as part of who you are, as an innate part of who you are as a person, why would your body do anything to heal from it? Your body has no incentive to. So if you internalize it as part of your identity, you're never going to be able to overcome it. You're going to be forever stunted in that place until you learn that you can detach it from yourself. And maybe you can't cure it, but maybe you can get the symptoms down to the absolute minimum. Maybe you can make it so it's not even a part of your life that you even acknowledge anymore, where you're like, oh, yeah, I have this thing, but it's not a big deal. Like, I don't even think about it. I don't spend any time thinking about it at all. Now, the third option, and I'm sure there are other options too, but these are the three that's coming to mind at almost 2 a.m. The third option, when you have something traumatic happen to you, is you can try to understand the experience, try to understand how it impacted you, but see the experience as something that is separate from you. You may not have had control over the experience, but you do have control over how you manage it. And the key issue here is realizing that you have an internal locus of control, that you are responsible for how you experience the elements in your life, that you have the power to make decisions regardless of that experience. None of your decisions about how you see yourself, how you show up in the world, how you interact with other people, any of these things, none of these things have to do with you making decisions about how to exist in your experience. Just because something happens to you doesn't mean you have to let it rule you. Just because something happens to you doesn't mean you have to let it control you. And teaching people anything other than that, I'm sorry, is abusive. If we are teaching people, children especially, that they are victims of their experience, that is abusive. You're trying to stunt them in a place where they will never be able to overcome the trauma. And maybe you're doing that because you yourself have not overcome whatever trauma you experienced. But it is cruel to push that onto someone else, especially when they're young and do not have the ability to defend themselves. I will never, ever, ever apologize for writing what I wrote in my DISENRAGE blog about there not being a good and bad, and there can be absolute positive outcomes that come from traumatic experiences. I will never apologize. And Jamie can smear me on Twitter all she wants. And they can go, she's a pedo. She's condoning child rape, which, of course, is just an absurd and stupid interpretation of what I said. But I think what they're doing is worse. I think that teaching a child that they are a victim forever of something that happened to them that they could not control is child abuse. I think the world would be a better and much happier place if we taught everyone starting in preschool that they are not victims of the world, that they are responsible for what they experience in life. They are responsible for how they show up. They are responsible for working to overcome any trauma that they experience. They're not a victim of that trauma. You don't want them to forever be stunted by that trauma. You don't want them to think their life is over because of that trauma, because their life isn't over. They can have a long and glorious life regardless of that trauma. And isn't that what you want for them? I will never, ever apologize for teaching people that. I will never, ever apologize for saying you really shouldn't be teaching children that they have no control over how they show up in the world. People who have a victim mentality want to drag every single person down with them because it makes them feel justified for having a victim mentality in the first place. Because what does it mean if a person doesn't see themselves as a victim? What does it mean if you have a person that sees themselves as a victim of the world and a person that does not see themselves as a victim of the world? How do you think that person who sees themselves as a victim of the world and doesn't understand any reality, or perhaps has no experience with any reality that would allow themselves to see themselves as maybe a target, but not as a victim? A person who sees themselves as a victim of the world is usually not going to have a positive perception of someone who does not see them as a victim of the world. And they could have exactly the same trauma. Let's exist in a fantasy land where we have identical twins. They've actually done studies on this. We have identical twins that have had extraordinarily similar life experiences, that have had the same traumas, very, very similar traumas. And one of those identical twins believes they are a victim of the world and they refuse to manage the baggage from the trauma. And the other identical twin says, I am not a victim of my trauma. I'm going to move on with life. My trauma is not going to control me. The identical twin who has the victim mindset, where they are allowing themselves to be controlled by their trauma, and it is a choice. It is always a choice. We are being abusive to people when we tell them it is not a choice and they don't have any other option in the matter. If you are choosing to be a victim of your trauma, then you are never going to have a positive perception of the person who is choosing to not be a victim of the trauma, because that person represents an unlived reality that is completely accessible to this person. And this person that is not existing as a victim of their trauma, that is not allowing their trauma to control them, is going to have much more success in the world, and they are going to have a much more fulfilling life. They are going to be much happier. They're going to have much better relationships. They're going to have much better self esteem. They're going to have much better self perception, self love. Every element of their life is going to be better because they are not perceiving themselves to be controlled by their trauma. They are not perceiving themselves to be a victim. They know they have control over their lives. They know that they are empowered to make decisions. The person who is allowing themselves to be controlled by their trauma and believing the falsehood that my life has been destroyed because a bad thing happened to me, they are setting themselves up to have a miserable, unfulfilling life in which they are reliving the trauma over and over and over and over and over and over and over again throughout their entire life. If they're not reliving it in actual reality, they're reliving it in their heads, and they're doing it to themselves because it is a choice. The initial trauma may not have been a choice. In most cases, it wasn't. That initial trauma was out of their control. But what is within their control is how they manage the trauma moving forward. So, why are we telling people that they are a victim of their trauma? Do you want them to relive it over and over and over and over and over again all throughout their life? Or do you want them to be able to move on from it? And maybe they still think about it every once in a while, but it's not going to preoccupy their thoughts. It's not going to be the first thing they think of in the morning. It's not going to hold them back from doing the things that would make them happy or what they really want to do. Why would you do that to someone? That's abusive. That's emotionally abusive. Now, it might not be pleasant for people to hear that existing in your trauma and allowing your trauma to control you is a choice. That might not be something that they want to hear, but it is the most loving thing that you can tell a person. You are not a victim of the world. You have the power to make different choices. You have the power to see the world differently. And I will absolutely not give in to any cancel mob on the internet who wants me to say anything different. I will not give in to Jamie Mitchell's reeing cancel mob from Gays Against Groomers that wants to make me believe that I am a horrible, vile, bad person because I am saying that children are not inevitable victims of their trauma, that it doesn't destroy their lives, that they can make choices that allow them to move past it, that everyone's going to experience trauma, and it's how we deal with it that's really what matters. I will not give into this. I'm sorry. And people can have all the feelings they want. But I know that life is better when you understand emphatically that you have a choice in the matter. If you are living in a reality in which you have been taught you are a victim, that means that you do not have a choice. If you are living in a reality in which you believe you are a target of something, that means you have a choice about how to manage it. Helping people to empower themselves by knowing that they always have a choice, even if it hurts them, even if it requires making a different decision than they've ever made in their lives. That's the most loving thing that you can do for someone. And I absolutely refuse to allow a cancel mob of outrage addicted junkies on Twitter that are going to save the world from grooming. I absolutely refuse to allow these people to force me to bend the knee to their outrage addiction and teach the world anything differently than exactly what I have to teach. So, I hope you guys enjoyed the stream tonight. The Silenced Lesbian, I'm glad you made it. The more power one gives to his thought, the more completely he believes that his thought has power, the more power it will have. Exactly. Exactly. All right, guys. That's all I've got for tonight. I hope that that was helpful for people. If you enjoyed it, please mount that like button on the way out the door. I appreciate you guys. I hope you appreciate sometimes late night streams. My husband was really confused. He's like, why are you going live at midnight? I'm like, because I want to, okay? But that's all I got for tonight, guys. Take care. Have a good one, and we'll see you soon.